Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Auto Tech Show. This is part 3 from our Apex mini-series, the final part. We recorded these episodes, of course, live from the trade show floor at Apex this past fall in Las Vegas. And on this episode, this final episode, I'm very excited to bring you Cecil Bullard. He's the CEO and owner at the Institute for Automotive Business Excellence, coaching and consulting automotive operators to be more efficient, take advantage of all the solutions that are out there, and essentially survive this very difficult time in the automotive industry. A big shout out to what he's doing with his organization there. Now, I want to talk to Cecil about a very specific topic, how advisors and technicians can have a better working relationship and work together in these challenging times. As I mentioned, these two elements, one dealing with the customer, one dealing with the vehicle, they have to have an optimized way of communicating, an optimized way of working together to bring the customer the best possible situation. And it is, of course, helped by technology, helped by different methods, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode with Cecil. So let's jump straight in, enjoy this episode, and here we go, back to Las Vegas. Cecil, thanks so much for your time today. I know you have a million things on your plate during an event like this, so I appreciate the time. How's Apex been for you so far?
Great, actually. We have a booth, and we've had quite a few people come by, and it's a big, for us, it's almost more about meeting with other vendors. We like to do strategic partnerships, helps us get the word out, bring clients in, and so, yeah, it's really good, especially in that aspect.
Okay, and is it meeting your expectations this year? How were you coming into it?
Well, we were here before COVID, and then we were here after COVID. And the first year after COVID, this was the first event that came up. Okay. And it was kind of slim pickings. Yeah. But I was really glad that they committed. They did it. They might have lost money on it, but I don't know if they did or didn't. But I was really happy that they committed anyway to it. Last year was bigger and better. This year is even bigger and better. I don't think I came with the same expectation that I would have pre-COVID, because if I did, I might be disappointed. Yep. But I think that I came with a realistic expectation, and I think it's certainly meeting that.
Based on the trainings you do, because obviously you have your training sessions while you're here, are you seeing the right type of companies along the lines of what you want to be talking about and what you want people to learn?
Probably not as much, and we know that about Apex and SEMA because this is more car shows. So you have a lot of Chinese vendors, Taiwanese, etc., and they're not my clients, right? And I'm not going to help them. I mean, maybe I could, but but
as a primary for what you're doing.
But it's not what we do,
right?
And so but there's a lot of owners and service advisors running around here, and they're the people that we help, right? And so they're here to see the fancy cars and the new equipment and get deals and things like that. And so we do get to talk to them, and it's a good place for us. It's also kind of, marketing's an interesting thing. You can have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows it, then you're in trouble. Yeah. But if the more people that know that you're here, that's the real issue, right? Can you help them? Yes, we know that based on our results. But do they know that we're here? Do they know what we do? Yeah. And just by being here, being a part of it helps with our branding and our, people getting to know that the Institute exists and that they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, and ultimately collectively close the gaps that exist, whether we're talking staff shortages or we're talking about communication issues. Well, no matter what it is, everyone collectively trying to close those gaps from different angles of the industry.
And it just amazes me sometimes in our industry, we're so fractured.
Yeah, it's true.
That I think if we could get together as an industry and really identify the gaps and really work on those as an industry, not just one smaller company, another smaller company, but as an industry. Yep. And then, of course, you do have technology, which is kind of what we're here to talk about, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you bring certain technologies. You look at digital vehicle inspections. 10 years ago, nobody had it. Mm-hmm. And some guys were taking pictures, and some guys started sending videos, and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, that is a technology that would really help build customer value, trust, etc. And all of a sudden we have multiple DVI companies, and many shops are using them. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of shops that don't.
Yeah, right? And I think that's the gaps we want to close, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring you onto the show is how can we close those gaps? And specifically when we look at within an operation, there's the technician side, there's the service advisor side, a lot of analog data in a lot of these shops that haven't had the chance to upgrade. How would you advise that a lot of these shops go about closing that gap? Is it an education side? Is it being more proactive with technology and solutions? What's kind of your first impression on closing that gap?
I think it's always about communication.
Yeah.
Okay. So unfortunately in a typical automotive shop, we're so busy trying to take care of customers that we don't focus on how do we improve our communication? Mm-hmm. How do we improve our process, right? Because that's what it's really all about. Yeah. When you run a shop that has really good process mm-hmm. and you have really great communication, then there are less, the gaps get smaller and smaller and the customer gets better service, or at least the customer feels that they're getting better service, right? The perceived value goes up. Yep. And that's really what we're trying to do is create this perceived value for our client. Yep. So it's funny, we were just talking to a guy at our booth and he's taken a lot of our free online stuff and et cetera. And now he's like, I think I might want to, really get this going.
Perfect.
But his service advisor's right next to him saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Interesting.
Right? And
from a process point of view.
Yeah, because he knows what he knows, right? And what the big problem, a good friend of mine years and years and years ago, one of my mentors said, Cecil, the problem is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And if you knew it, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So, this guy, their rate is a certain rate and you're like, hey, what's your average repair order? And it's very low for the industry. And I'm like, well, we need to fix that. We need to bring that average repair order up. Well, you can't do that because our customers are this, or you can't do that because of that. And the truth is, well, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, we work with, my estimate is about 3,000 shops over the years. Okay. And our average client earns almost 20% out the bottom line. And the industry as an average is about 4%. Okay. So they also have better lives. They don't work 60-hour weeks. They work 30-hour weeks or 20-hour weeks. Not that their shop isn't open, mm-hmm. but they're not an integral part of, because they have good people, good process, good communication, right? And so the first thing is, do you build a culture of communication, build a culture of success?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, integrating that cultural aspect.
Yeah, and so you can't build a culture if you don't talk about it. Yep. Right? Who do we want to be? So, 20 years ago, a friend of mine calls me and he says, I need you to come run my shop. Now I'm in Utah and he's in near the San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you got to be crazy. I'm not going to come run your shop. He says, oh no, Cecil, I really need your help. They had 14 employees. They were doing just under $1.1 million. He was losing about $16,000 a month.
Crazy.
Okay. And so he's like, well, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, well, I'm looking for a job, And he says, well, you got to come. And he convinced me to come out to his shop. So I saw this beautiful shop and I thought, I'm not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And I start working with him. And he's the guy that kind of told me, you don't know what you don't know. But what we did was we decided kind of amongst ourselves in our business, we got together with our employees and we said, who do we want to be, right? Do we want to be a mediocre shop? Do we want to be a tire store? What do we want to be? And my employees said, we want to be the best shop in the United States. And so, I'm an American, so if we're the best shop in the United States, we must be the best shop in the world, right? Yeah. So then years later, I worked there for about 6 years. We went from 1.1 million to 2.6.
Fantastic.
4 technicians, 120% productivity. They're just a shop that really, really hummed. And then I left. The owners, it's funny because you work for someone, you make them a ton of money, and then they start looking at what you're making. And they're like, well, maybe we're paying him too much. Maybe if we lowered that, we'd make some more money. But, they were net almost 19% after paying me to run the shop.
Yeah.
And they, at 2.6 million, they were like, we can't go any further, right? That's it.
They'll see that.
And I was like, no, we can do 5 million out of this shop.
Wow.
And so I have this weird, if we're not progressing, I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
So I quit and started my coaching and consulting company at the time. But years later, Google wanted to buy the property. So they offered him like $1.5 million more than the property was worth. Cash. They wanted him out. And he calls me and he goes, what do I do? I'm like, holy crap, you're 72 years old. Close the shop.
Yeah, take the money and go.
And what about the employees? They'll find jobs. Just let people know that they're out there. And sure enough, in 24 hours, every employee had a job. He had a 19,000 customer database. 19,000 customers. He divided up amongst 4 shops and handed it out. Just said, here you go. Closed the shop. But here's the deal. Here's the point for the 10-minute story. Later, I was getting a little I was thinking, oh my God, we worked so hard and now it's gone. And, I was getting a little depressed about it. And I thought, were we really good because I was running? Is it Cecil, right? Was it me?
The Cecil magic.
And there is some of that. Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
But really, it was the culture of the shop because we wanted to be the best. So everything we did was judged on, would the best shop in the United States do that way? Yeah,
operate as if you're the best.
So our communication processes, we met once a week to discuss the results and where we were falling down and where we could get better as a team. And I think one thing that happens in a lot of shops is there's an us against them mentality between the front and the back.
That's a great point. So it creates a divide.
Yeah, and so we're on the same team. Yeah. I mean, what is the ultimate goal? To create an unbelievable experience for our customers so they'll come back and keep paying us, right?
Long term, yeah.
And so if we build the right culture, we communicate that culture and we allow the employees to be a part of that, that progress. So if there is a new technology that's going to make us better, well, would the best shop turn that down? Right? If there's education that would make us better, would the best shop turn that down? Or would the best shop not be able to afford it?
Yeah.
What would the best shop charge?
So to think in that way, think as if you're the best.
Yeah, and so I think that created a kind of a culture of communication where, oh my gosh, our comebacks just went through the roof. And so instead of going, why are these stupid texts, blah, 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 instead we're saying, why did that happen and how can we fix that?
Yeah, how do we
And we're all
evolve
working together, right?
Does it take is that a hard fight to push, to get everyone to come together, or is it?
Yeah. It's
especially
a
if the culture's the opposite,
right? Yeah. So you as a consulting company, we walk into all kinds of shops. I mean, I've seen things that would,
the kitchen nightmares. Of garages.
You just seen it, right? I've seen it all, and it's funny because every shop owner thinks their shop is the worst shop, and I'm like, oh no, I've seen much worse than this. I was talking to a shop the other day, 13% profit on their parts. And the goal is 55 to 58. 58's my goal. 55's what we'll accept. Yeah. And they're at 13%. They're going broke. And you're like, oh my God. And he's like, oh, we're the worst shop you've ever worked with. I said, well, maybe in parts margin, but not in anything else, right? There's a lot you do well.
Focus on that as
well.
And
so every shop, doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to come up against problems in the business. And sometimes you're going to do really great inspections, and then something's going to happen and it's going to fall off. And you have to have good leadership, good management that can recognize it and bring it up in the right way. So even in the leadership and the management, when you're having this conversation about, well, holy crap, our techs are mad, right? They're upset because they're not getting good information from the service advisors. So they're getting, car doesn't run right. That's the description, diagnose. And they get the car and they go drive it and it seems to run fine. And they're frustrated. And now it's, instead of saying, those darn stupid service advisors, they can't give me information. If you have a good culture and a good manager, now you sit down as a team and you go, man, we're really failing on information. What would the best shop do, right? And now you come at it from not I'm saying you're not doing your job right.
Pointing the finger type of culture.
Now you come at it as how do we solve this problem as a team and come up with better ways to communicate? Yeah. And so I think the words we say and how we say them matter immensely.
Yeah, that first.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you approach somebody on a head-on collision, you're going to have a head-on collision. You're both going to have a headache, right?
Yeah. And defensive, and then it just gets more toxic.
It gets worse and harder and harder. So we come in these shops where it's a disaster, and the first thing you have to do is you have to start thinking about team. How do I build a team here? So I came into a shop with 14 employees.
Okay.
And I'm the new guy, and everybody's pissed off because it's not making any money. Nobody's happy. The owner's unhappy. Service advisors unhappy. Techs are unhappy. Don't get me wrong, I fired a few people.
Of course. If they don't fit, then yeah. Absolutely.
And we didn't need 14 people to do 1.1 million, right? So I came in as a new guy, and I started thinking, who's the one person I could get on my side?
Yeah.
Right? And so I started going, okay, you're the service advisor. It's you and me, right? And so I built a management team. And pretty soon I had 5 people in my management team. And then I had 11 employees. So that was...
Instead of 14 employees,
Yeah, instead of 1 against 13, it was now 5 against 6, except it really wasn't 5 against 6. It started becoming, wait a minute, so many of us are heading in the right direction.
Let's get on board.
That other people wanted to get on board.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong.
That's an easier path that way too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so much easier.
Yeah.
And so, and don't get me wrong, almost always you think everything's running smooth and one of your employees has a DUI or, it gets divorced or, has a drug problem. And you're like, holy crap, I thought everything was great. It was. And now you need to get it back to great again, right?
But the foundation's there.
Yeah, if you have that. So communication, culture is at the core of it all. And then communicating that, allowing people to be a part of that. So sometimes, having done this for many, many years, somebody goes, well, let's try this. And you're like, oh, crap. Yeah, we tried that like 17 years ago. And man, that fell on its face. Sometimes you have to go, you know what? Let's try that again.
Yeah, maybe now we're ready.
Yeah, because you don't know. And what happens a lot of times, the employees are the ones that know what you're screwing up.
Yeah, they're the ones at the front line.
Right? And they may have some false perceptions about some things like the price is the reason that you're not as busy or something like that. But they can also tell you where things are going south if you listen.
If you listen.
Yeah. And so what you want to do is you want to build that, hey, why don't you come help us solve this problem because it's good for us, it's good for you.
That team,
right?
Yeah, like you said.
And then also if you build what I call performance enhanced pay plans, which is about 60% of your pay comes hourly, and then about 40% will come from what is required for your position, what's success. And there's a great author named Charles Coonrat who wrote a book called Scorekeeping for Success. And then there's another book he's got, I can't remember the title right now, but you need to keep score. You need to have this is success for your position.
That defines success.
Yeah. And you need to define it for your staff, or you and your staff need to define it because that's what you work towards. Yeah. And then when you hit it, everybody's on a high. And when you don't, people are going, oh, we're not successful yet. Well, okay, what would the best shop? Instead of, oh, we're all failures. What should we change? Yeah. What should we do different? And the owner of the last shop I ran, which is this shop, he had this word, Japanese word, kaizen, right? Which I hate. I hate the word because it means small incremental improvement, and I heard it 10 times a day, every day for 6 years. But that's really what you're doing, right? You're just looking for what's the next thing that we can do together to, number one, become a team and start moving in the same direction. And then number two, to be successful, to actually win the game. You create the game, you win the game.
Yeah. So it all starts from that team, open communication, no doors between teams, not pointing fingers, keeping everyone moving in the same page, but those small steps together to a defined success goal.
Yeah, and you do want to look for technology that can help you in different areas.
That's what I was going to bring up. Today's world, how does technology help that communication path? Because there's so much solutions out there that offer that unambiguous data communication tool.
You go back 20 years and we had software systems, but the techs were never in them. We didn't let them.
Yeah.
Right. And there was no DVI and there was no tech view and all of that's kind of come in the last 20 years. But there's some technology out there today that my guys used to have to handwrite an estimate, and my tech would inspect the car and then they'd handwrite the inspection out and what the car needs and the parts list.
And that would go to the advisor then?
Yeah, and then that would go to the advisor, and the advisor would, look up the parts and total everything, and then they'd call the customer. And nowadays,
your systems will do 90% of that.
So that the person can focus on the actual human-to-human connection.
Well, I don't want my service advice. So most shops are not productive.
Yeah.
And by productivity, I mean, like I was just talking to an owner and I said, how many guys? You guys got 3 guys. I said, what are you going to do this year? He said, right now we're doing about 80,000 a month. Okay. So 3 guys, 80,000 a month, that's 960, just under $1 million. But that shop with his labor rate should be doing about $1.6 million.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So they're at, I don't know, 65% productivity, right? And that lack of productivity is costing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to the shop. And if I don't have that money, I can't pay my techs and I can't pay my service advisors. You know, you're going, okay, we should be doing, let's say $1.5 million conservatively. How do we do that? Right? Oh, it's about communication. Most of the time, the reason the techs are not productive has nothing to do with a lazy tech. It has to do with systems and processes that don't allow for productivity.
100% agree.
So now you talk about technology. So is there technology for scheduling that I can use? Yeah, there's a couple of really great scheduling technologies out there.
Plenty off-the-shelf solutions,
right? Is there a technology for dispatch? Well, a lot of the SMS systems have a
built-in somewhat
pretty good dispatch system. I don't think there's any really fantastic one right now, but they're better than they were 20 years ago.
If they're used,
Right. And then estimating. I don't have to write it out. Now my techs can go in and say, this is what the car needs. Pull it right off the DVI, right? And generate the parts list already in the computer. So now the service advisor doesn't have to redo it, retype it.
Or decode the messages that are on the paper.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're always decoding. If you're smart, you're learning who your people are and how they communicate.
Yeah.
Because one tech is doesn't spell well, or maybe he's dyslexic, and so you got to struggle a bit with that. But you get to know, hey, that's what he means when he's saying this. And then the other thing is, do you create, like we had I had a set of terms, like what is a seep, what is a leak, what's a severe leak, and what's a drip.
Okay.
Right? And so we had a list of standards. When do we recommend coolant system flush? Why would we do that? Right? And when do we recommend a brake system flush? When do we service transmissions? Either what's the mileage or what's the condition? Yeah. And then we used that vocabulary and we taught all of our people. So every one of my techs had a sheet
that language
that was laminated, that was on their toolbox, that spoke the language.
So some consistency through the communication process.
Right, you're starting to create consistency of how you talk.
Yeah.
Because now if I can say, oh, this has got a leak.
What does a leak mean?
Yeah, it's already defined.
Yeah.
A leak is something that is dripping, but maybe not on the ground. Because now you go back to manufacturers, go back 25 years, there were no drip pans.
Yeah.
Okay, there was the oil pan and then the ground.
So go right to the floor.
And now you got almost every manufacturer now has
something to catch it,
cover underneath, and it's got a diaper in it. It's not
that's
just,
right, it's that, yeah.
It's got a diaper, and why is that there? So it's not dripping on the ground, so the customer doesn't say, well, this BMW is a piece of crap.
Yeah, why is there oil on my garage floor?
Yeah. So a leak doesn't touch the ground, but a drip touches the ground.
So having these words defined then just makes it less ambiguous when you're speaking from team to team.
It creates much clearer communication among your team.
So there's no more guessing.
Every shop should have a set of standards. Like, when do we recommend coolant flush? It's funny to me because, I know what I recommend and I know what I teach. And yet I was at a shop the other day and their average repair order is low. And they were like, well, the techs are saying, well, yeah, but everything's aluminum. And coolant, when it becomes, when it goes below 8 pH, it's not bad for aluminum. But if you look at the research, acidic coolant eats aluminum.
Eats it. So that's a problem.
Okay. So now we have a standard. If it's below 8, it's becoming acidic, and we recommend coolant flush, right? And it's a scientific test.
Yeah.
It's not.
So that's an education side of it as well.
Right. So as a sales guy, I can say, well, my tech says you need coolant flush. And that distances me from the tech and makes the customer think I'm unsure
affects that relationship.
Right.
So maybe I don't go here next time. Yeah.
Right. Or
Interesting.
Or I walk away not feeling as comfortable about getting the work done.
Yeah, you're not going to go for that full service package that was advised.
But if the service advisor says your coolant failed the test, the pH should be 8 or above, you're at 7, that's a picture that you paint that's very clear, right?
And there's reasoning, and then there's justification.
Yeah, and so here's what you need, and here's why you need it. And by the way, that coolant is damaging expensive components. At some point, we're going to have a catastrophic failure. We don't want that to happen, right? Now I'm on the customer's side.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you're working your way over the counter.
Yeah, and so now and that's about communication with customers, right? But you can't have that
without that other communication piece.
If you're not confident about the communication with your techs, right?
Or trusting it, and then I guess the other way as well. So,
and then it's also about messaging. So, I was in a class the other day, and I don't know, I probably had 30 people in the room, and I said, "How many of you are service advisors?" Half the class raised their hand. I said, "How many of you, when the tech says the car needs this, this, and this, you have to go look at the car?" Half the class raised their hand, and I'm like, "Are you nuts?" Because if I trust my tech, right, and they say it needs front brakes because it's at 1%, I already know what that means. I don't have to go look at the car. Well, it makes me more confident. You should be confident from the start because you trust your tech. If you go look at that car, what message are you sending your tech?
The tech, especially now, they don't trust you, and then you're creating more further gap.
Yeah, and so the way we communicate, the culture we build, and you might be the only sales guy in the world that actually has to see it before you can sell it, right? But get used to not seeing it.
Get used to trusting your team.
I mean, one day I'm sitting there as writing service, and my techs come in and they're like, "Man, you got to see this. There's a live rabbit trapped in the wheel well of this car." And I'm like, "Holy crap, I got to go see that, right?"
That I want to see.
But don't tell me for the 5,000th time the car needs brakes because at 1%. I know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't need to go look at it.
Yeah.
And then one of the reasons why you have low productivity in shops is because the car takes too long to get through the process.
Okay.
Too long to inspect, too long to estimate, too long to sell. So you have a tech standing there for 2 hours while the service advisor is trying to get it estimated and sold, and the tech's not efficient, right? Can't be. And part of that is because you got a service advisor that has to go look at the car. Well, that takes 10 minutes.
Every little bit slows it down.
Yeah, and then you're talking to the tech for 5 of those minutes. And what's the tech doing while he's talking to you?
Not working on
the car. He's not fixing another car, right? So if you can create
compounds.
Yeah, if you can create really good communication process through your business and use technology to do that, you can take your productivity from 65% to 95 or 110.
Yeah, I mean, that's motivation enough. That's
right.
Yeah.
I would tell you the average shop in the United States is probably losing, I'd say Canada too, because we got clients in Canada. It's about the same. Probably losing somewhere between $140,000 and $250,000 to productivity issues. And it's
a
almost,
wake-up call.
Yeah, and it's almost all, when we go in, for me, it's like, it hits me in the head. It's like a hammer just whacking me on the head. For the owners that are there, they're like, I don't understand this. I mean, we have lots of work, but my techs aren't productive. We can't get the work out. That's communication. That's culture. That's system and process.
It's a huge wake-up call is what it is.
Yeah, and if you can fix those things, all of a sudden you have much happier staff, much happier customers, much more money in the bank, and everybody gets paid more, right? And that's ultimately, my first customer is my employees. I have to make sure that it's good for them.
They're happy,
But it can't be good for them if it's not good for my clients. You know, the one that's out there that's bringing their car in and paying the bill. So, yeah, communication, huge.
Huge. And everything. And it's the core. And it seems like that's the gap that needs to still be closed for many.
And we have so many people that are really good techs, but they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to manage. And if they could learn that skill set, and it doesn't take away from being a good tech. It's an added thing that would then make their shop so much more productive and profitable for them.
I understand.
And they end up working ungodly hours. My dad worked 70, 80 hours a week. Didn't have time for his family. Our mission statement is better business, better life, better industry. Because if we can help you run a better business, then you will have a better life. Your kids will get to see you, spend some time with you. You build those relationships in your family. Your employees will have better lives. Their children will have better lives. Yeah. And you deliver an amazing product to your customers.